Joey's News Channel, everyone. Today I have Miss Joy with me today. I'll be asking her questions. Hi, Miss Joy. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, goodness. What do you want to know?
Anything about yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Miss Joy, like you just said. And what do you want to know about me? I have been a member here for quite a long time. I have 3 adult children now, okay? I've known you since you were born. That's something interesting, even before you were born, okay? And so I've watched you grow up into this fine young man. Never thought I'd be having a conversation like this with you. But it's nice.
Job.
It is. It's nice.
What history of Grace Church will you talk with us about today? And tell us about it.
Okay, so I am involved in a lot of ministries here, but the one I really enjoy the most is our VIM team. Do you know what VIM stands for, Joey?
No.
So VIM is Volunteers in Mission. Now, if you remember when you interviewed Miss Amy for your little talks, she had on a shirt similar to this, right? Had that logo. And it made me really happy to see it on her. The thing is that we do get these shirts on our week of service, but that's not the only time that we're in service. Like Miss Amy is doing the food pantry every week, right? So she's a volunteer in mission every week, and so that's kind of neat. But we first, as a family, went on our first Volunteers in Mission trip in the year 2000.
Cool.
That was a long time ago. You weren't even a thought at that point.
That was 21 years ago.
Yeah, and so my kids were very small. You know, Maria was almost 9, Andy was 11, and Jen 13. And we went on this trip, and it pretty much changed our lives. We just fell in love with helping people where they were, in their homes and that sort of thing. And so we've been doing them since Dave and I took over the leadership of the VIM team in 2003. And so since then, we've been doing it every year. It really became our family vacations. We would take our VIM trip, and that would be our vacation to go work a week somewhere.
Bible verse that guides you?
You know, I printed some out because you warned me about this question, and so I was ready. I actually have 2, if you don't mind listening to 2. So the first one is pretty straightforward. It's from Matthew 22, verses 36 to 37. We hear one of the Pharisees, who are the religious leaders, and they're testing Jesus. And they ask him, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." So that's pretty straightforward. God calls us to love our neighbor as ourselves. Sometimes that means giving your neighbor, even if they're in Kentucky or West Virginia or New York, a helping hand, right?
All the way to California.
Wherever you travel, those are your neighbors. But we also, Dave mentioned this in a VIM talk one time, and it's a story about Joshua, and it's in chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. I don't know how familiar you are with the Old Testament, but you remember a guy named Moses, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Moses helped the Israelites get out of Egypt where they were slaves, right? And they wandered for a long time.
Burning bushes.
Yeah, all of that, yeah. They're wandering. And they finally, God's promised them to get them to the promised land. And they are finally getting there, okay? Moses, unfortunately, doesn't get to go. He ends up dying before he can get into the promised land. Okay, we're not going to get into why, but that happens. But Joshua takes over. And so Joshua comes in, he's going to get these people to the promised land, and they're going to conquer this first place in Jericho. Okay? So this is where in Joshua 6, 1 through 5, this is what God tells Joshua to do in order to conquer this first city. March around the city once with all the armed men. Okay, that makes sense. Do this for 6 days. Then have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpet, have all the people give a loud shout, and the wall of the city will collapse.
I figured out something about the Bible.
What did you figure out?
Every time something happens it's like it was all planned out, or it was happening for a reason.
Yeah, God has a plan. Yeah, but that story, it kind of makes me chuckle because it seems so ridiculous. Joshua is taking these armed men, and what are they supposed to do? Run around the city 7 times and then yell and the walls are going to go down. Why do they need to be armed to do that, right? So it just seems so ridiculous, that this is happening. And sometimes when we're on Vim trips, we feel like God asks us to do ridiculous things, okay? And if my husband were here, he would tell you sometimes it's God and sometimes it's me. Meaning his wife, asking to do ridiculous things. We had one trip where we went and we were asked to, the husband of the family that lived in this house had been in the hospital, and he is ending up being wheelchair bound. They didn't have a door to enter their home that was wide enough for a wheelchair. Okay, so he couldn't get in the house when he was going to be released the next day to get into the home. So we're sitting around back at our place where we were staying, and it's like, who's going to cut a hole in their house to make room for this door? And everybody's just sitting there. And I said, Dave will do it. Dave will do it. So he somewhat agreed, and anyway, we went on with our night. Well, Dave has long since gone, and he's laying down where our air mattress is, and I'm busy doing some other things, prepping for the next day. And I come into the room, and I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm watching YouTube videos on how to put an exterior door into a home. He had no idea. He hadn't done it before. So here he's got to go cut a hole in somebody's house. And it's kind of crazy, It's just crazy. So those are kind of the Bible verses. The one is just, love your neighbor as yourself. And the other is, God's going to ask you to do some crazy things, so be ready. But he's going to be with you. So.
Do you have a favorite moment here?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Yes. So my husband's not with us, so I'm going to, again, share you two. One of mine and one of his. Okay? Mine's a little longer. His is short. I'll start with his. He remembers the year that we took 39 people on a Vim trip, which is a lot. And we managed in 1 week to build 8 wheelchair ramps. Really? And that was really cool. And some of them were switchbacks, so they went back and forth, so they were really long ones. So that was really neat. That was a fun year to get so much accomplished. But we had a lot of people. Now on my end, because I handle more of the logistics. That's a big word. You know what that means? It's kind of the planning your mom does before a camping trip, your mom or dad do. Oh, yeah. Where you're going to stay, what food you're going to take, all of those things. Yeah, those are logistics on what you're doing. I handle that kind of thing. Well, one year we went down to Kentucky, and we were staying in this tiny little house. There was room enough for all of us, but it was small. And I had planned the food. Okay, we're trying to stay in a budget, spend only a certain amount of money, and I planned the food. And we got down there and we went in the house and we go in the kitchen to put the food away that I had brought, and it is filled with roaches. Do you know what roaches are?
Yes, I know enough about roaches.
Humongous, roaches.
Humongous things that will probably eat anything.
Oh, it was horrible. It was filled. You open the refrigerator, hundreds of them in there. Okay? They were everywhere.
Did they eat your stuff?
Well, I couldn't cook in there, right, with all those roaches. So we ended up then, our budget was like, how are we going to stay in our budget and then feed people? Because buying food, from a restaurant is so much more expensive than buying the food and making it, right? So I didn't know how we were going to do it. Well, time after time that week, God showed up and provided stuff. We went to a Sonic burger place, and we walked in and we were just ready to beg and say, look, this is how much money we have. We need food for these 30 people I have back at this place, and this is how much money I can spend. And they said, didn't you see our sign? And we said, what sign? He said, the one that says buy one, get one free. And we were like, no, okay, thanks God, and away we went, and they threw in all the fries and the condiments and everything on top of that. So it was time and time again that week that I learned that I can plan all I want, but I also just have to rely that God is going to provide what we need when we need it. And it's hard. It's a hard lesson to learn, but that's what I keep learning every year, because I never get it all the way straight. but I have learned to just really rely on him.
How can you use volunteer?
Well, that's an excellent question, Joey. How old are you?
I am 10.
So that makes you in what grade?
I'm
Fourth grade, going
about to be in 5.
going to be in fifth. Yeah. So usually, my answer normally would be when we're going away for a week, which is what we like to do. All right, we leave Aberdeen and go somewhere to serve. You need to be in 6th grade at least. So 6th through 8th grade and above. You know, when you're in high school. If you're in 6th to 8th grade, we like you to have a parent or an older sibling with you just to keep you in line. Right? So you'll have to wait till then to go away. However, because we're in a pandemic, this year we are going to be serving, it's July 12th through 16th, but we're serving right here in this building. So we're going to be working here at church. You can come if you want. So the age doesn't matter. Still like you to come with an older sibling or parent, but we'll take, anybody that wants. So anybody that wants to serve can just contact me and we'd be happy to have you. So July 12th through 16th. All right?
I could.
You could, yeah? Maybe talk to your mom.
Right.
Thank you for talking to us, Miss Joy.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
I was about to say, it's my pleasure.
No, it's my pleasure.
Well, that's it.
All right, thanks.